You sit in a room full of people and somehow still feel alone, not because nobody is speaking to you, because almost nobody is saying anything real. You notice the rehearsed laughter, the safe opinions, the strange social ritual where everyone pretends certainty while quietly terrified of being judged, and without realizing it, you begin pulling away. Not dramatically, quietly. You stop explaining yourself. You stop volunteering your deeper thoughts. You learn that every time you speak honestly about what you actually see, the room changes temperature, faces tighten, smiles become cautious. People look at you as if you broke an unspoken agreement. And the unsettling part is this: you did not even try to intimidate them. What if I told you that society has always been deeply uncomfortable around highly intelligent people, not because intelligence is dangerous in itself, but because genuine intelligence disrupts psychological comfort? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will understand why some of the smartest people often feel isolated, misunderstood, or emotionally disconnected from the world around them. More importantly, you will understand whether your loneliness is actually evidence of something you have never fully recognized about yourself. If this already feels personal, drop a 1 in the comments right now, and do not leave before the final section, because the last truth changes everything. Now, let us begin. There is a certain kind of intelligence that society celebrates publicly but quietly resists privately. Not the performative intelligence of memorized facts, not the socially acceptable version packaged into polished confidence and corporate language. I am talking about the kind of intelligence that sees through things, the kind that notices contradictions immediately, the kind that senses emotional dishonesty before the sentence even finishes, the kind that walks into a room and instantly understands the invisible hierarchy operating underneath the conversation. These people are rarely loud. In fact, many of them become quieter over time because they discover something early that changes the architecture of how they move through the world. Most people do not actually want truth. They want psychological stability. They want reassurance, predictability, emotional comfort disguised as certainty. And highly intelligent people, often without intending to, threaten that comfort simply by existing honestly. That is the paradox. The very thing that allows them to understand human behavior deeply also makes human environment psychologically exhausting for them. Because once you see certain patterns, you cannot unsee them. The first reason intelligent people disturb society is something psychologists call cognitive disruption. Let me explain this carefully. Most social systems operate on silent agreements. Families have them, friend groups have them, workplaces have them, entire cultures have them. These agreements determine what can be questioned and what must remain untouched. Highly intelligent people unconsciously challenge those agreements, not always verbally. Sometimes their mere hesitation is enough. Sometimes it is the pause before they agree with everyone else. Sometimes it is the uncomfortable question nobody wanted asked. And here is what happens neurologically when this occurs. Human beings are deeply wired for social coherence. The brain experiences group agreement as safety. Predictability lowers cognitive strain. Consensus calms the nervous system. But highly intelligent individuals often introduce complexity into systems built on simplification. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer emotionally comfortable. Suddenly, people must think. And thinking deeply is metabolically expensive. The brain avoids it whenever possible. So the intelligent person becomes associated with tension, not because they are wrong, because they are disruptive. That is why many intelligent people learn early that honesty has social consequences, and silence becomes easier. The second reason society fears intelligent people is far more emotional. Intelligent people force others into involuntary self-awareness. This is where things become deeply uncomfortable. A genuinely perceptive person sees the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. They notice insecurity disguised as arrogance. They recognize performative kindness. They hear resentment hiding underneath politeness. And most frighteningly, They often say very little about it. That silence unsettles people more than confrontation ever could. Because human beings are surprisingly comfortable with visible conflict. What terrifies them is being accurately perceived. Let me be clear about this. The intelligent person is not always judging you, but people feel judged around them because intelligence naturally increases pattern recognition. And pattern recognition creates psychological exposure. You begin feeling emotionally transparent. That is why some highly intelligent people repeatedly hear the same strange phrases throughout life. You think too much. You make everything complicated. You always analyze everything. What people often mean is something much more revealing. You make me aware of things I was trying not to see. And awareness changes people, sometimes permanently. The third reason intelligent people scare society is their relationship with solitude. Most people use distraction to regulate emotion. Noise, notifications, endless conversation, constant stimulation, social activity that prevents introspection from surfacing too strongly. Highly intelligent individuals often move in the opposite direction. They withdraw, not because they hate people, because silence allows coherence, solitude allows integration. Their nervous systems become overloaded by excessive superficial interaction, and society misinterprets this constantly. The quiet, intelligent person is labeled arrogant, detached, emotionally unavailable. But here is what is actually happening internally. Their minds are processing continuously. Conversations do not end when the interaction ends. They replay details, analyze motivations, reconstruct emotional dynamics, examine contradictions. Their inner world remains active long after everyone else has emotionally moved on. This creates exhaustion most people never see. And over time, many intelligent people begin protecting themselves through selective distance, not superiority, preservation. The fourth reason society becomes uncomfortable around intelligence is because intelligence exposes artificiality. Highly intelligent people tend to lose interest in performance very quickly. They notice when relationships are transactional. They recognize when institutions prioritize image over truth. They sense when someone is speaking from genuine conviction versus social strategy. And once that sensitivity develops deeply enough, normal social behavior can begin feeling surreal, almost theatrical. You begin noticing how often people say things they do not mean, how frequently approval governs behavior, how much human interaction revolves around managing perception rather than communicating honestly. This realization changes people psychologically. Some become cynical. Others become extremely selective about who they allow close, because authentic connection becomes rare, and rare things are protected carefully. But here is where the tension escalates. Society depends heavily on social performance to function smoothly. Entire systems rely on emotional scripts remaining unquestioned. The intelligent person unintentionally destabilizes those scripts, not aggressively, architecturally, and people feel it instinctively. The fifth reason intelligent people frighten society is perhaps the least discussed. They are difficult to manipulate. Emotionally intelligent and intellectually perceptive individuals eventually develop an unusual relationship with pressure. They notice guilt tactics quickly. They detect inconsistencies in emotional narratives. They recognize when fear is being used as leverage. This makes them unpredictable inside systems dependent on conformity. Because manipulation depends on unconscious participation, the moment someone fully sees the mechanism operating against them, the mechanism weakens dramatically. That is why highly intelligent people often appear stubborn. But many times they are not resisting authority itself. They are resisting incoherence. They need things to make sense. And when something does not make sense psychologically, emotionally, or logically, their nervous system resists compliance automatically. This can isolate them professionally, socially, even romantically, because many environments reward obedience more than awareness. Now, I want to speak directly to those of you who are recognizing yourself not as the intelligent person, but as someone who has felt uncomfortable around one. Because this is important. The discomfort is rarely about intelligence alone. It is usually about unresolved insecurity colliding with perception. Research in social psychology consistently shows that human beings regulate self-esteem relationally. We compare constantly. Status, competence, emotional control, social approval. And highly intelligent individuals unintentionally destabilize those comparisons because they often operate according to entirely different metrics. They are less impressed by status symbols, less persuaded by popularity, less emotionally dependent on consensus. They ask questions other people stopped asking years ago. That independence can feel threatening, especially to someone whose identity depends heavily on external validation. But here is what matters most. Intelligent people are not inherently better human beings. Let me be absolutely clear about that. Intelligence without emotional maturity becomes arrogance. Intelligence without empathy becomes detachment. Intelligence without humility becomes alienation disguised as superiority. And some highly intelligent people absolutely fall into that trap. They begin using intelligence defensively. They withdraw too far from humanity. They mistake emotional numbness for wisdom. They start observing life instead of participating in it. That is not evolution. That is self-protection calcifying into identity. And this is where I want to speak directly to the intelligent people listening. Your loneliness is understandable, but it is not proof that nobody can understand you. It is proof that shallow environments cannot sustain you for very long. There is a difference. The danger is when discernment quietly transforms into avoidance. When you stop giving people chances entirely. When you begin assuming emotional depth does not exist because you encounter superficiality too often. Because highly intelligent people sometimes develop a hidden form of emotional perfectionism. They crave depth so intensely that ordinary human imperfection begins feeling intolerable. But real connection is not built through intellectual precision alone. It is built through patience, through vulnerability, through allowing yourself to be known gradually instead of remaining psychologically armored behind observation and analysis. And yes, that is frightening, particularly for people who see so much so quickly, because intelligent individuals often anticipate disappointment before intimacy even fully begins. Their pattern recognition becomes hypervigilance. Their awareness becomes emotional forecasting. They protect themselves preemptively. And slowly, without noticing, they become isolated inside their own accuracy. That is the irony nobody talks about. Sometimes the intelligent person is correct about everyone else and still profoundly wrong about life itself. Because life is not solved through analysis alone. It is lived. The deepest truth here is this. Society does not truly fear intelligent people because they are smarter. Society fears them because genuine intelligence forces confrontation with reality, and reality is emotionally demanding. It requires self-awareness, accountability, change. Most people prefer environments that reduce psychological friction. Intelligent people increase it naturally because they notice what others normalize. But the healthiest intelligent people learn something crucial eventually. The goal is not to stand above humanity observing everyone coldly from a distance. The goal is to understand humanity deeply enough that you can remain compassionate even after seeing its contradictions clearly. That is real intelligence. Not cynicism, not superiority, integration. Because the wisest people are rarely the loudest people in the room. They are usually the ones who understand how fragile most human beings actually are beneath their performances. They recognize that arrogance often hides fear, that cruelty often hides shame, that manipulation often hides emotional starvation, and that awareness softens them instead of hardening them. If you are one of those people who has always felt strangely disconnected from the world around you, I want you to hear this carefully. Your sensitivity to contradiction is not brokenness. Your need for solitude is not failure. Your exhaustion around superficiality is not arrogance. You are responding naturally to environments that often reward performance over truth. But do not allow that realization to turn you against humanity entirely. Because there are people in this world capable of meeting you deeply. People who value honesty over image, presence over performance, conversation over competition. People who do not fear intelligence because they are not threatened by awareness itself. And when intelligent people finally encounter emotional safety, something remarkable happens. They soften. The analysis slows down. The vigilance relaxes. They stop scanning for hidden motives. And for the first time in a very long time, they feel understood instead of merely observed. That is not weakness. That is what the nervous system does when it finally experiences psychological safety. The tragedy is not that intelligent people scare society. The tragedy is that so many intelligent people spend years believing they must hide parts of themselves just to remain socially acceptable. Do not do that. Refine your intelligence. Temper it with empathy. Ground it with humility. But never amputate your depth to make shallow environments feel more comfortable around you. Because the people who change the world are rarely the ones who fit into it easily. They are the ones who see it clearly enough to imagine something better.